Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated. But I'm overwhelmed seeing the flags of the United States of America at half-staff, calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land. And hearing people with selective rage who are mad about Charlie Kirk but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were shot down in their home, tell me I ought to have compassion for the death of a man who had no respect for my own life. I am sorry, but there's nowhere in Bible where we are taught to honor evil. And how you die does not redeem how you lived. You do not become a hero in your death when you are a weapon of the enemy in your life. I can abhor the violence that took your life, but I don't have to celebrate how you chose to live.
Stand up.
Yes, indeed. That is all the nuance you need, I think. Pastor Howard John Wesley of Alfred Street Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. on Sunday in his sermon, I think, nailing it. Oh, wow. Hello, and happy Monday. We are in it. That means the week. It's mid-September. I'm very happy to have you here. I'll host a hangout tonight at 8 p.m. and one on Thursday at 8 p.m. as well. That's the schedule for the weekend. I've got a great guest joining me. Jared Yates, Sexton, and I went live yesterday on several different platforms. I hope you're following and you would have seen it live. Otherwise, great conversation that I'm about to share with you here. If you want to jump past the news and clips, it begins at 38 minutes in. But I've got a lot to share that transpired over the weekend. I always do your headlines and a clip show. Got a whole bunch of good ones for you today, so I'm happy to have you here. I hope that you are hanging in there and not too alone or suffering too much. We are suffering beans. I like how Dan Harris, who hosts one of my favorite podcasts, 10% Happier, often opens his show that way. Hello, my fellow suffering beans. I like that because it acknowledges that we all struggle and it's not the norm to feel always happy and joyful, but especially in these times when you get so many different things coming at you, it can be very, very overwhelming. So I'm happy to have you here and connect with you here on the show and the Discord platform anytime if you're a paid subscriber of the community and, of course, at our Hangouts. All right. Well, I'm doing all right. Had a good weekend and I'm happy to be here with you. I want to get right to it. Let's get to the headlines I've gathered for you over the weekend.
It's Pete's Headlines and Clip Show. Get in on the shit show.
All right, let's start with this attack on Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook by our Mad King and his hacks at the Federal Housing Finance Department, Director Bill Pulte. They're using this to justify an attempt to fire her by saying that she declared two homes her primary home. Well, guess what? Reuters got the documents saying that is not true. So this is a big development, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get away with firing her, which is not necessarily an issue that you might be paying attention to. It might not be the sexiest issue. It might be too convoluted because it deals with all this paperwork and so on, but it's super important that that woman stays at the Federal Reserve so that Trump cannot take over the entire monetary policy of the United States of America and really threatening to discredit the full faith and support of the dollar, which would affect a lot of us. So I think that's a really big story. That's why I put it there. All right, let's move on to fake tough guy, Christian nationalist, and our Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. He said yesterday that the Department of Defense was closely tracking any military personnel who celebrated or mocked Charlie Kirk's death. I guess I am talking about things related to Charlie Kirk here at the top. I just do think it's important that they are suggesting that the administration would potentially strip visas from individuals who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death. Trump also renewed his call for prosecutors to file racketeering charges against George Soros. Trump and his allies have long claimed without any evidence at all that Soros is fomenting violent protests. Stephen Miller, who is a terrible person, characterized the current moment in America as a battle between family and nature, and those who celebrate everything that is warped, twisted, and depraved. He said the fate of millions depends upon the defeat of this wicked ideology. This guy is really something else. And Eric Trump said that this is a hit on our country, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's a hit on our movement. It's a hit on Christianity. It's a hit on religion. It's a hit on freedom. It could have been the greatest mistake these people ever made. Who? What? Who are these people? It's a hit on Christianity. It's fake-ass, violent Christians. And Elon Musk said the left is a party of murder and celebrating murder. And also he inspired 100,000 people along with this other right-wing activist in the UK over the weekend to protest. There were counter-protests that were cheerful the next day, I believe. Or was it at the same time? I don't know. But it's crazy what's happening in London and elsewhere as well. CNBC is reporting that Democrats are zeroing in on health care as a key sticking point in negotiations with a threat of a government shutdown on September 30th looming. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer and House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries have said that they will not support GOP-backed legislation to keep the government funded unless it includes certain health care provisions, setting up a bitter policy fight, the Republican lawmakers that could trigger a shutdown. So watching that closely, and with funding on the brink, congressional Democrats are demanding any legislation that would avert a shutdown, including an extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which are set to expire at the end of the year unless Congress intervenes. If the tax credits disappear, by the way, average premiums could soar about 75%. And that would be very bad for lots and lots of people. Well, how about this? California state lawmakers passed legislation that would ban most law enforcement officers from covering their faces while carrying out operations in response to recent immigration raids in Los Angeles. But even if the governor signs the measure into law, it's unclear whether the state could enforce it on the federal agents who've been carrying out those raids. So that's a kind of a sticking point. And new economic projection that's not good. Our Mad King's tariff policy, immigration crackdowns, and sweeping tax and spending laws are expected to increase jobless rates and inflation and lower overall growth this year before they improve potentially next year, according to a new report from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. The CBO on Friday released new economic projections for the next 3 years, updating the outlook it originally released in January before Trump's inauguration. And finally, the Emmy Awards were last night, which made a lot of news with several different big-name celebrities making comments about all kinds of political things. I've got a couple of them for you coming up, but that is what I've got for you on the headline. So let's jump to your clips right now. And let's start with Stephen Colbert winning the Emmy for Best Talk Show last night. Here he is. All right, there you go. Colbert last night getting us kicked off here on the Clip Show. I thought that would be a positive way to start because I got a couple bad ones for you coming up.
10 years ago, in September of 2015, Spike Jonze stopped by my office and said, "Hey, what do you want this show to be about?" And I said, Spike, I don't know how you could do it, but I'd kind of like to do a late-night show, a late-night comedy show that was about love. And I don't know if I ever figured that out, but at a certain point, and you can guess what that point was, I realized that in some ways we were doing a late-night comedy show about loss. And that's related to love because sometimes you only truly know how much you love something when you get a sense that you might be losing it. And 10 years later, in September of 2025, my friends, I have never loved my country more desperately. God bless America. Stay strong, be brave, and if the elevator tries to bring you down, go crazy and punch a higher floor.
All right, there you go. That's how it sounded last night at the Emmys. And there were a couple of pretty, at least that I saw, maybe there were many more, but outspoken comments made by other celebrities. First, Javier Bardem was on the red carpet. He was wearing a Palestinian kaffifa scarf, and this is what he had to say.
Here I am today denouncing the genocide in Gaza. I'm talking about the IAGS, which is the International Association of Genocide Scholars, who study thoroughly genocide and has declared it is a genocide. And that's why we ask for a commercial and diplomatic blockade and also sanctions on Israel to stop the genocide, free Palestine.
All right. There you go. Javier Bardem last night at the Emmy Awards. And then actress named Hannah Einbinder also had this to say after she won her Emmy for Hacks, I think what the show was.
Finally, go Birds, fuck ICE, and free Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. I thought that was pretty good, pretty bold, and we'll see if she ever works in. You know, it's very, very important, I think, to make important comments, bringing attention to serious issues when you're on a platform and you have a platform like that. I give credit to anybody who does. There you go. No matter who it is. Okay, let's go on to Nate Bargatze, who didn't use it for that reason. He was the comedian who was the host of the Emmys. He's notoriously apolitical. There was no mention, I think, complete silence on Charlie Kirk, by the way, including by Nate Bargatze. But his opening bit was basically about how everybody needed to keep their speeches short, and if they didn't, then the Boys and Girls Club would lose money, which I'll let him explain it. I think it's pretty funny and a clever idea, and it put everybody at home and in the auditorium at some ease, potentially.
You might know, if you haven't heard, so we got an idea. As a host, they asked me, when you give your thank you speeches, they just said you got to keep them on time. So they wanted me to come up with a way to do that. So what I came up with is this way. Is everybody gets 45 seconds. And honestly, give your speech. I know how hard you guys have all worked to get here. I'm not trying to take anything away. 45 seconds. That's what you got. And if you want to do more than that, do it on social media later. That's more people are going to see it there anyway. So to start the show, I am going to donate $100,000 to the Boys and Girls Club of America. So yeah. All right. Remember that. Remember how fun that was, because this part is hard to say. If you stay at 45 seconds, it stays at $100,000. That's all right. I know. If every second you go over, every second you go over 45 seconds, we will deduct $1,000 away from the Boys and Girls Club. I know. That's tough. It's hard. That's tough. It's brutal. What are you gonna do though? You know, I can't change it. This is a game I made up, and these are the rules. So there is something. Look, if you go under, we will put $1,000 a second back on for the Boys and Girls Club of America. Relax. Let's have fun. All right. By the way, we want to see, we already got started. Seth, congrats. Feel bad he didn't even know about this at all. But what did Seth do? Was he over, under? Stayed to 40, under. No. All right. He was under. Don't go crazy though, because I am paying for this. So don't, some of you go over a little, some go under. Do the right thing.
Yeah, there it is. Last night at the Emmys, that was the bit. And so I think the Boys and Girls Club ended up losing money. In the end, they were way down. They're still going to give a donation and obviously a lot of attention to their amazing organization. So that's how it was at the Emmys last night. At least that's what I grabbed for you. Now let's go to ABC News. I think this is the broadcast from the weekend, their nightly news show with their anchor and their economic reporter, Rebecca Jarvis. Guess how she got put on the map? That's from The Apprentice. That's right. It was on the season I was on, and I worked with Rebecca on her final challenge on NBC's The Apprentice. Now, of course, she's the chief economic reporter over at ABC with this important report on prices, our economy.
We have news on the American economy and the prices you pay. The new numbers, grocery store prices up from ground beef and steak to fruits and vegetables. Coffee is now up more than 20% from this time last year. Economists on what's driving this. Here's our chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, tonight.
Tonight, if you feel like prices are still inching higher at the grocery store, you're not wrong. According to the latest inflation report out today from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, food prices between July and August jumped 0.6%, the biggest monthly increase since August 2022, and are now 2.7% higher than a year ago. With coffee up 20.9%, apples up 9.6%, and bananas up 6.6%. Ground beef up 12.9%, and steaks up 16.6%. And while the price of certain items like eggs and ham have been moving lower recently, economists predict the impact of President Trump's tariffs will start showing up more overall in the final months of the year.
Tariffs are clearly going to be causing price increases across consumer goods. I think we're going to start to see a lot of it as you get closer to the holiday season.
Many major retailers like Walmart, Macy's, and Home Depot have acknowledged those increased costs, but say they're working to keep prices low where they can. And David, economists are pointing to a number of factors driving this, a shortage of farmers, those tariffs, and even bad weather. David?
Rebecca Jarvis with us here tonight. Rebecca, thank you. And with inflation and those rising, the stock market actually responding positively today because many investors believe those concerning numbers will convince the Fed to cut interest rates next week. That news sending the markets to record highs today, the Dow closing above 46,000 points for the first time ever. The NASDAQ and S&P 500 also hitting all-time highs.
Well, it sounds like everything is going in the right direction. Not too worried about that. The markets are soaring. Hey, at least your 401k looks good for now. Yeah. All right. I love Ali Velshi. He does the best work in cable news on the weekend with his show Velshi, and he had a great conversation with a very important guest, Texas State Rep Justin Pearson, who's been very outspoken over the past couple of years. And man, does he nail it in this interview. I highly recommend you watch the entire interview. But I did grab a couple of minutes from the conversation that they had because our Mad King Schittler, he's going to now send troops into Memphis, Tennessee, where there apparently is a lot of crime. He's targeting another city that has a highly black population, black mayor as well. Here's a little bit of their conversation, Ali Velshi and Justin Pearson, who represents part of Memphis.
This is the playbook for the abuse of power and the building up of an authoritarian regime led by a white supremacist president in an effort to become the wannabe dictator that he's always articulated that he wanted to be. And it's particularly obvious that black cities and black-led cities or black majority cities are the main targets by this administration, by Governor Bill Lee in Tennessee. And it is also apparent that they have done absolutely nothing to actually improve the quality of lives of people. If you're ever going to deal with crime, you have to talk about poverty. There's been no conversation about poverty. There's been no conversation about gun violence prevention. There's been nothing to actually systemically address the problems and the issues that we see. But what they are trying to do, and what we need to be so, eyes wide open about, is they're trying to take over the military to be used for political purposes. And this is about crime today. But as you know, the midterms are coming. A presidential election is coming. We should all be terrified by what we are seeing.
Yeah, one needs to read a pamphlet on history to understand that the fighting crime thing and bringing the military thing all over the world is a ruse. But let me talk about, you brought up two specific things, that if you want to improve quality of life, you got to deal with poverty and you got to deal with gun violence. You were ejected from the Tennessee legislature. I want to remind people, you're not some random activist. You were ejected because of having to do with gun violence. It was about a shooting in Tennessee.
One of the largest mass shootings in the state of Tennessee, the Covenant School shooting in 2023, we stood up, myself and two of my colleagues, to say we need to do something about gun violence. The number one cause of death for children under the age of 18 is by a bullet, not by cancer, not by a car accident. We have a problem. And because we were standing up, I was expelled by the Tennessee General Assembly with Governor Bill Lee as governor of our state for taking a stand and saying we need to do something. And so this is completely and entirely a ruse. It is to distract us away from the fact that they have done absolutely nothing to improve the quality of our lives. If you wanted to deal with gun violence, Governor Bill Lee, President Trump, then you would ban assault weapons. You would make sure that people would have to pass background checks. You would do things to take firearms out of the hands of people who should not have them. But that is not what is happening. They're not saying they're investing billions of dollars into poverty reduction plans, into housing, into economic opportunity, into educational access for people in Memphis. They're just saying we're going to bring the military and somehow that's going to solve your problems. It didn't do it in 1968 after Dr. King's assassination. It didn't do it after the Memphis Fire Department's protests in the 70s. Bringing the National Guard is not something that has ever been to the benefit of our communities overwhelmingly. And so we do not want them here in Memphis, in Shelby County. What we do want is federal intervention financially. We do not want military occupation.
All right, Justin Pearson on MSNBC with Ali Velshi. Great stuff. Watch the whole segment. I highly recommend it. I'm going to try to get him on this show. Now I want to go to something a little bit different. This is a Christian response to Charlie Kirk's murder. I thought it was interesting and great. Christian minister named Reverend Dr. Chuck Currie, Currie, has something different to say.
Christian minister here. Charlie Kirk is not a martyr for Christ, despite the claims on social media this week from the right. While we condemn his murder and the gun violence that led to it, we must also reject MAGA's efforts to portray him as something he was not. Kirk preached hatred and division as a white Christian nationalist, which contradicts Jesus' teachings. He preached anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, misogyny, and homophobia. Jesus said that the greatest commandment was to love. Kirk preached that empathy was weakness and that gun deaths are the cost of freedom. His death is tragic, and I'm thankful that the shooter has been apprehended. But the media should stop portraying him as a man of peace just following Jesus, when he was anything but. And yes, it dishonors the United States to award a white Christian nationalist the Presidential Medal of Freedom, as Donald Trump has promised. White Christian nationalism is a false gospel rooted in white supremacy. This week's violence was horrific and has been rightfully condemned. But that violence should not be used today to normalize, even celebrate the hatred that white Christian nationalism embodies. All of us need to commit ourselves to nonviolence. Anything else is incompatible with democracy. May God bless our country, may God bless all of you, and may God bless the world. Peace be with you.
All right, well, that was a little bit better Christian response, I thought, and wanted to share it with you. Now, over on Fox News, they're going nuts about this black man who killed a white woman. There's video of it. It's freaking horrible, and he was mentally ill, and it's just awful. So they're nonstop talking about tailor-made for right-wingers, especially because there's video of it. Anyway, while they were talking about it, of course, Brian Kilmeade, who was in the conversation, said we should just kill homeless people. And then that went pretty viral. Luckily, I think it's important because then he had to come on and apologize. But first, here's one of the dumbest people in all of TV, Brian Kilmeade.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this. We're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
All right. Well, when he woke up, he had to apologize. So he went on Fox News and made like a brief apology. Seemed really sincere.
of Irina. And it actually happened when we were together on Wednesday, Lawrence. In the morning, we were discussing the murder of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte, North Carolina, and how to stop these kinds of attacks by homeless, mentally ill assailants, including institutionalizing or jailing such people so they cannot attack again. Now, during that discussion, I wrongly said they should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. I'm obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion. Lawrence, back to you.
All right, Lawrence, that's my apology. Back to you. He's the worst. I mean, he's not the worst, but he's up there with the worst. And I'm glad that comment got caught and that he had to walk it back. But I think a lot of people will probably agree with him, unfortunately. All right, well, let's move on to this guy I see and watch on TikTok whose name I am forgetting, but has great commentary on the whole Charlie Kirk debate style and who he was. I thought this is really pretty good. I mentioned that he was a good debater at our hangout last Thursday, and half of you tried to destroy my life. So maybe we shouldn't use the word debate. Regardless, I thought this guy puts it pretty succinctly and appropriately. Sorry, I forgot his name. I'll find it.
Earlier today, I normally actually really like Ezra Klein. I do. I think Charlie Kirk did not do politics the right way. Ezra Klein put out this article earlier today. I normally actually really like Ezra Klein. I do. I think he has taught me a lot. But this idea that Charlie Kirk was like engaging in debate for the sake of democracy is insane. And Gavin Newsom put out a similar statement. I think it is so ridiculous, and here's why. Charlie Kirk is a media mogul, and he's brilliant, truly. He understood before anybody that the best way to get clips for social media to build audience was through clipping debates and arguments and fights. That's why he went to college campuses. That's why he does debates. That's why he goes and fucking brings camera crews to every single one. It's not for the sake of building democracy and being good at politics. It's because he understands how the digital media ecosystem works. He understands that by dunking on 17-year-old college kids who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and by him being able to speak smarter and faster and more eloquent than them, that he's going to grow his audience faster than anybody. And that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did. He is a media mogul. Okay, this guy built Turning Points USA, a for-profit, a non-profit, and a PAC. And he was the most significant contributor to the MAGA project. He literally radicalized millions of young men because he was clipping all of his videos debating people. The idea that he was doing politics well, it's like, was Goebbels doing politics well? No. He was smart and effective at his job. It doesn't mean he was good at politics. He was an evil motherfucker. Come on.
Yes. What do you think? You agree with that? Is that better? All right. Well, let's head over to NBC's Meet the Press, where Pete Buttigieg was on, and I thought this is a couple good clips, so I wanted to grab them. And I should mention that she does play Trump to get his response, so you're about to hear Schittler.
Mr. Secretary, I do want to get your response to some of what we've heard from the president. This from the Oval Office just this week. Take a look.
My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
What is your reaction to hearing that?
I want to be really clear about this. This is an example of something that is hurting. We're not getting the leadership that we need to bring this country together from the White House. And in order to turn the tide of political violence, yes, we have to reject those who commit political violence. Yes, we have to reject those who celebrate or promote political violence. But also, in order to deprive political violence of its power, we have to reject anyone who would try to exploit political violence. The response to this cannot be for the government to crack down on individuals or groups, not because of violence, but because they challenge the government politically. We need to have free and open political debate and a healthy political process in this country. And by the way, just like an overwhelming majority of Americans reject violence, An overwhelming majority of Americans, left, right, and center, believe that the government should not be cracking down on its political opponents because they are political opponents, not in the United States of America, not ever.
All right, there you go, Pete Buttigieg. One more quick clip because she spent her last question asking about his former boss as it relates to Kamala Harris's new book.
I have to ask you about this new book, Vice President Kamala Harris. We are starting to see some excerpts. She writes about President Biden's decision to run for re-election, and she says this, quote, "It's Joe and Jill's decision. We all said that like a mantra, as if we'd all been hypnotized. Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness." You were in the president's cabinet, of course. Do you believe it was recklessness for President Biden's inner circle not to intervene sooner?
He should not have run. And if he had made that decision sooner, we might have been better off. But it literally was his decision. Nobody else was able to make that decision. And now in front of us, we're confronted with the decisions that come next, whether that's inside of a political party or movement, or as we're all weighing right now, in our own lives as Americans, as a country. And that's where we've got to focus.
All right. There you go. That is it on that one. And now I want to give you acclaimed Irish writer Colm Toibin. He was on the radio over the weekend, an Irish radio station, and I saw this clip, so I thought it was good, and I wanted to share an international perspective, which I also think is pretty accurate.
Knows this is how Hitler took power. Slowly, paranoid, sending troops into cities that don't need the troops, saying there's danger everywhere when there isn't danger, picking people up off the streets. I mean, the ICE stuff in California is beyond belief. I had a friend who had a guy just doing odd jobs for him, who would normally get the material himself in the morning and bring the material to work. It's a normal way, since things are so far away from each other in California. The guy just said innocently one day, I won't be able to bring the material. And my friend said, why? Well, we can't go to the hardware shops. The ICE watch the hardware shops in California because that's where the undocumented go, because a lot of people are doing odd jobs and they pick them up there. And the problem is they pick them up and no one can find them. I mean, this is disappearing people. And, so, you know, things are very bad. November I'm talking about things being good because there's a possibility of 2 elections in November that will really matter. But in the meantime, Trump has all the power.
Yes, good stuff. That guy's smart and has made a lot of good points there. So I wanted to share that one. Also saw these last 2 clips are kind of random, but very important. Both of them, I think. And wanted to share them with you. So first of all, this is a woman who is a doctor. She's an expert. And this was shared by Senator Cory Booker. And I thought it was very good for a couple of reasons, but the way that she calls out the Maha movement and the way she talks about it, I think is really well done. So I wanted to share this one with you as well. And there's a lot of birds, a lot of nature noises. She's obviously outside. Hopefully that's not too distracting from her larger points.
Stay in your lane, they said. Well, this is my lane. I'm a board-certified ER physician with 10 years in emergency medicine and 12 years in longevity medicine. My specialty? Hormones. I live in both worlds, traditional medicine and wellness. I believe in strategic supplements and saunas and sun exposure. As someone who has been in the wellness space for over a decade, I need to tell you something. You are being played. You leaned into Maha because traditional medicine failed you. You want something better for yourself and your kids, and I totally get that. But while you're celebrating the removal of red dye and you're laughing at RFK taking his raw milk shots, something sinister is happening behind the scenes. Right now, the administration is rolling back more than 30 environmental protections. They're allowing for more mercury and arsenic and lead in our waterways. The Trump administration is revoking PFAS limits in drinking water, exposing more than 100 million people. They're blocking pesticide warning labels, including glyphosate, which is a known carcinogen. Trump is tripling the allowable atrazine levels in water, which is linked to reproductive harm. This administration is deregulating those GMO crops that you're so worried about. Clean air, clean water, clean food, those are the cornerstones of wellness. And this directly impacts women's hormones, which is my specialty. PFAS and phthalates impair ovarian function. They cause PCOS and irregular cycles and infertility and adverse pregnancy outcomes. These endocrine disruptors block your natural hormones. They affect thyroid function and they increase your breast cancer risk. You want me to stay in my lane? Well, protecting women's hormonal health from environmental toxins, this is my lane. Whatever your politics were or are, this is happening now. And we in the wellness world need to pull our heads out of our asses and start making some noise.
Yes. Well, she's making noise. I thought that was great. Share that with your friends. And finally, our friend Kim Nyborg in Iowa always sends me great ideas for links to clips, audio that I can use here on the Clip Show. You should too. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Send me anything you're seeing that is impactful and informative and entertaining, important, anything that you think would be appropriate for the show, to standupwithpete@gmail.com. It's super helpful for my workflow to find all of these clips that aren't just in my algorithm and being fed to me the way I'm searching for them as well. All right, but this is a good clip because it's kind of a criticism on male culture today. This is this content creator. Again, I don't know his name. I forget his name. But he's doing this little banter while he's at the sink washing things. This is more made for video than audio. Still, I think the points are very good, and I like it, and I wanted to share it with you.
A lot of self-help stuff geared towards guys is like, cut out your friends if they don't help you achieve your goals. And I don't know how to put this more simply to you. Friends is the goal. Hanging out with your buddies is not a distraction. It is the cornerstone of life. Napoleon was able to conquer all that land because he didn't let friends distract him. No, man, Napoleon conquered all that land because he didn't have enough friends to hang out with. I guarantee if you get me, Napoleon, and 5 guys in a Buffalo Wild Wings, by the end of it, he'll be like, this is way better than the Iberian Peninsula. Oh, but hanging out with your friends will get in the way of you making $1 billion. Hey, man, stop being weird. You can come to Buffalo Wild Wings, but don't say stuff like that because you're freaking people out. We are all at a table daring Rob to take his shirt off, and if he gets another IPA in him, he might do it. So when I hear weird influencers be like, you shouldn't be happy until you make $10 million, I'm always like, brother, what are you ordering at Buffalo Wild Wings?
Yeah, I thought that was fun and funny. And thank you, Kim, for sending it to me. Send me your clips for the Clip Show. It's super helpful. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I cannot do any of this without your support. And so sign up now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic is the place to go. It's as little as $5 for access to our whole community and to support this show that I do every day. It's my full-time job. If you can pay more than $5, you get more out of it than that. You can always upgrade your pledge. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. It is ad-free. Those are the ads. This show is supported by listeners like you, and we can always use more, a lot more. So thank you very, very much. Okay, now let's get to my conversation with Jared Yates Sexton. We were live yesterday. You can watch this on YouTube. You should support him on Substack at Dispatches from a Collapsing State. Definitely get all of his books. Follow him on Blue Sky and listen to the Muckrake podcast as well. I always love when I get the opportunity to talk to Jared, and it was great to catch up with him yesterday on a Sunday afternoon where we start, and he says he doesn't think we ever did that. I think he's right. Let's do it right now with the always interesting, informative, thought-provoking, thoughtful Jared Yates Sexton. Yes, look who it is. On a Sunday afternoon, and you can catch him live tonight on YouTube. It's Jared Yates Sexton. He is also back with his bourbon talks tonight, but I got him right now, and I'm really happy to see you. Thanks for saying yes.
Man, it is good to see you on a Sunday. I don't think we've ever done this before. Maybe on Saturday, but Sunday vibes are different from a Saturday vibe.
I thought you'd be the perfect guy to talk to here now that a lot of water has passed under the bridge since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You went live right after it happened, and again, a couple days later, you've had time to think about and write about this stuff. And so I just thought it'd be really important and interesting to talk to you about the way you see it and how you see it. But before just that and everything else that's happening, we were talking just before we went live here about the importance right now of building community. That's my goal right now. We're in it. whatever you want to call it, fascism, authoritarianism. This is the new normal for us. And I'm doing everything I can to connect people to each other, to create safety and sanctuary and support, no matter how you need it, no matter what you're going through. Talk to me about how you see the importance of that and how you're doing it.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm so glad that you and I are having this conversation, because it was a couple of years ago when we did the live gig out in Las Vegas and got to meet some of your listeners and got to know some people that, a couple of things started shifting into space for me. And, I've been building this community with like the Muckrake podcast for a while, and I've been doing this organizing work. And something that has become very clear to me the more that I study fascism and authoritarianism, which is, it is not something that manifests by itself. It is a symptom of a lonely, sad, scared culture. It is, we have an atomized society for a variety of reasons. I've been doing a series over on Dispatches from a Collapsing State talking about how this is a lonely country where we treat each other poorly. We have these transactional, shallow relationships. Families don't feel the same. Communities don't feel the same. Our friendships don't feel the same. If you look at the numbers, we are historically lonely and scared of the future. And so when that happens, we go into this activated state, oftentimes looking for a strong man or some sort of a fascistic movement to like come in and fix things for us. I think this is a side effect of all of those different things. The only antidote is to repair our relationships, build communities, push back against precarity, push back against scarcity, and start to remember like we're better together. When we love, when we trust, when we engage in solidarity, that's the only antidote to this. It's not everything else that gets put out there. Like, we have to come together and we have to like rediscover and reinvigorate society. And that's the problem that we're facing. And unfortunately, not a lot of people are talking about that.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking about it forever. And your first book, The Man They Wanted Me to Be, Toxic Masculinity and the Crisis of Our Making, was published when? Because that's how long you've been talking about it and living it before then. And you mentioned just specifically loneliness there. And I want to ask you how that affects younger men and how it affects older men from you and I and up, because it's not that it's not an issue for women. It's just that women are far less likely to move to violence, well, to join certain spaces on the internet, one might argue, maybe to be activated in the same ways by social media that men are. So how do you think younger men are dealing with this loneliness and this crisis, and older men as well?
Shittily. I mean, in the absolute worst possible way. And, it's one of those things, Pete, and you're an online guy, you pay attention to this stuff. You'll notice that, like, there are all these stories that are coming out in studies, and it's like, loneliness among men hits an all-time high. And that story is never next to the fascist story. It's never next to the authoritarian story. It's always over here by itself. And those dots don't really get connected. But what actually occurs, if you take a look at Nazism, you take a look at fascism, other authoritarian movements, these are predicated on masculine loneliness and feelings of humiliation and powerlessness. And what is it? It's basically in a situation where these young men, they don't have any sort of direction. They don't have any sort of hope for the future. They're told consistently that they're not enough. You have everything from incels to nihilistic, anarchistic, fascistic sort of sub-communities, which, speaking of Kirk, I think there's a direct line from that to what we're experiencing right now.
Maybe.
And
yeah,
basically,
looks like it.
Whether it's a cult or a fascist or authoritarian movement, Pete, it is basically like a fast track into associations, because men don't know how to speak to one another. They're basically each other's jailers in their loneliness and in their insecurity, even to the point where medically they become detached from their feelings. They have no idea what it is that they're feeling or why they're feeling it. And instead you get movements that say, feelings are for the weak people. You need to become more violent, more aggressive, more angry. And basically that gives you an association. That gives you a ready-made community, even though it's a cult, even though it's an authoritarian movement. And it leads to violence and fascistic authoritarian oppression.
For everything that, really well said, all of that, really important. And I wish I could underscore or pick up the thread in any one of those details, but I want to just move it into how this coincides with Charlie Kirk and maybe his assassin. But what we do know about Charlie Kirk is what he said and what he stood for. And, everybody's been watching maybe for the first time just how terrible he was, how insightful he was, how dangerous the things he was saying was, how racist and misogynistic he was. But I was thinking of all the things that he said and all the damage that he did, said, picking up on what you're just saying there, is that he had made remarks. I don't know how often he talked about it, that he was against empathy. I'm trying to find a quote. You just made me think of it, though. I think I found one of him talking, but he said, I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term, and it does a lot of damage, and I almost want to know what he's talking about there.
Well, I mean, so we don't need to get too deep in the weeds, but basically this is a refrain that is within that masculine fascistic culture, which is the idea that, and they say it in so many words, that empathy is cultural suicide. That the reason why everything is falling apart is because men have become weak. And by the way, there are complete links to this in the early 20th century. This idea of cultural suicide through immigration, through cultural assimilation, you name it, through women getting rights, through men becoming weak, which was the precursor to the movements that would eventually become Nazism and fascism, which, by the way, were harbored in the United States of America. Incredible authoritarian movement that inspired those groups. And it's funny not in a ha-ha way, but funny in an ironic way. Kirk and the alleged shooter are both coming from exactly what we're talking about. Kirk was basically a glorified youth pastor who went from one college to another trying to attract insecure young men in order to get excited about Jesus and authoritarian politics. Those same young men are the same group that, like, the alleged shooter came from, that come from these radicalizing online communities. And they work together, like, in many different ways. Like, some of them want, a Caesar, some of them want a dictator, some of them want a neo-Nazi ethno-state. But basically what's happening is that in many of these cases, it's the same, usually white young men who are being radicalized in separate directions, but it's the same group. It's the same pot that are being radicalized, not just by the internet, but also by people like Charlie Kirk. So in a weird sense, this entire sort of situation, if it turns out the shooter is the one who did it, it turns out that it's actually just sort of symptoms of the same thing that are coming together into this conflict.
Yeah, symptoms of the same thing for sure, in a lot of ways. How should we understand what we know so far? And maybe we should just look at the time that transpired between the killing and now, just to get your observations on anything from media narratives to the leaders, the difference between the governor of Utah, who was far from perfect, if you ask me, but to the president of the United States, who is just, I guess it always shocks the conscience that the president of the United States is always, he reacts with not caring and or inciting more violence. You heard from all of the past living presidents, and they all said around the same thing. Leaders generally say this around the same thing. Some of it is tiresome and nonsense, as you wrote about in your recent Substack, but picking up on anything that's transpired between the shooting and now media or political narratives, and then we can talk about, the future a little bit more.
As an analyst who studies extremism, radicalization, and authoritarianism, it has been fascinating because this entire situation, first of all, before anyone knew anything, before there was even a suspect in this, the right had completely figured out, quote unquote, what had happened and who was to blame. Their narrative shows the malleability of how they process information. Oh, at first the shooter was obviously a leftist and probably trans. Oh, he was radicalized by his professors. Oh, he lived with a transgender person. Obviously they were in a sexual relationship and that's what radicalized him. That sort of malleability, they were calling for war, Pete. They were calling for literal civil war and violence. Meanwhile, you have a president, and he is so cooked, and it's incredible to even look at it. Look at who this person is. Pete, he was so upset about Charlie Kirk that he then went to a Yankees game and danced in the stands and soaked in anybody who wanted to cheer him.
Well, I mean, to be even more specific, the next day he was asked about how he's feeling, and he said about Charlie Kirk, he said, "I'm feeling pretty good." And then he pivoted to talk about the ballroom under construction. It was absolutely. I've seen that clip enough, maybe once, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's very
You know what it is, though, Pete, and I'm so grateful for this because Donald Trump, one of the great things that he offers us is that there is no filter and there's no mask. You know what that clip is? It's sociopathy. He really does not care if somebody dies. He doesn't care if somebody gets killed as long as somehow or another it helps him. Like, people are disposable to him.
But he knows him well. Like, it's not just a stranger, like a child that was shot in their classroom and he doesn't care about, which would be crazy. A lot of people are disconnected from people they don't know. They have some empathy, but he knows the guy. The guy's very important to him.
Look how he's treated everyone in his life.
Yeah.
Like an ex-wife that he completely threw overboard and had no care for and publicly humiliated them. He has no care for his children. He has no care for another human being. That's the thing here that I think doesn't get discussed enough. We're not just dealing with a political project. We're dealing with a political project that is completely and utterly populated by incredibly unhealthy, sociopathic, psychosexual disasters. And so every time that we watch this, what we're actually watching is the unwellness reflected back to us. And so that clip, I agree. I watched that and I was like, I don't know that I've ever seen anything that told me more about a human being.
Yeah.
Like how hollow and disgusting and sociopathic this person is. But that is what attracts people because they are also in their own activated sociopathic bender, more or less.
Yeah, he's entirely transactional. I see in the live chat where we have lots of folks watching, and you should join the chat. Jared Yates Sexton's going to be live later tonight on YouTube, and you should be listening to his Muckrake podcast, which is great, with his partner Nick Halseman, who I love, and subscribing, of course, to his Substack, which is so good. Get all his books and all the rest. Okay, so what do you make of this scorekeeping, the rush to blame? We're terrified, and I'm not going to say on the left. I'm going to say Earth One. Most of us that are paying any attention, we're terrified that it might be a person of color, an undocumented immigrant, a trans person, a gay person, or just out, an openly progressive person connected to Democratic Party circles who voted for Democrats, gave money to Democrats. We were worried about that because that's how it always happens. And now it's a little bit more conflicted with who this kid is in a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of us are having a hard time, including me, understanding groypers and the perpetually online types. You've been writing about these for a long time. But my only point is that it does matter to keep score. It does matter, the motivation and inspiration for any killer. In the end, what matters the most is that they have easy access to guns and they can get them whenever they want. But it matters because that way you can get to the root of the problem, understand the problem, and resource the problem for local, state, and federal government. And for years, we were looking at the wrong threats mostly. Jihadist Muslims, jihadists who attacked us before. But really, the perpetual threat came from white, right-wing Christian extremist types, and we've seen that way more. So it matters to resource the threat matrix. Who's most likely to commit terrorism? Domestic terrorists, white guys, they're harder to stop. They're harder to profile, etc. There's way more of them. They slip in and out. So thoughts around why it matters to keep score and the root and the motivation for this or any other shooter.
Well, I want to start, and it's a great question, and it deserves a lot in terms of answers. I want to start at 30,000 feet, which is to say that we're in a period of American decline. We're in a period where democracy is in trouble. We're in a period where capitalism is completely failing and it requires fascism to square the circle. In those circumstances, Pete, violence is going to be much more likely. I said on the Muckrake podcast, I want to say it was like a year ago, I said, we're going to see a lot more assassinations. We're going to see bombings. We're going to see shootings, all this stuff. Because what happens is that as things get worse, there's more and more pressure put on the populace. So you're going to see more violence. And you're going to see a lot of people who don't feel a lot of power who are then going to take their powerlessness out on things. That is the root of terrorism. If people don't feel like they're able to affect change, they'll figure out a way to affect change. But now to get into the idea of scorekeeping, here's the larger problem here. This situation is so weird with so much specialized knowledge because immediately when this happened, everybody was immediately like, obviously this was a Democrat. Obviously this was a liberal. And, basically every moderate commentary was like, oh my God, we have to learn how to talk to each other. And they wanted to saint Charlie Kirk, the most embarrassing bullshit you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But those of us who study this, we were like, oh, this is probably an online extremist, either a groyper or an accelerationist or a nihilist. And the reason is because we have been so baked by the internet and the profit incentives that the tech algorithms like prioritize, which is radicalizing material. The reason why it's hard to understand what this guy was doing is because it's incoherent. Like, anybody who goes out and does this stuff, like, you can have people that are part of a larger revolutionary project, and so they try and kill someone. And then you have a lot of other people that if you ask them why they did it, the answer they would give you would be borderline incoherent. And we have a larger problem in this country. It's not just like patriots, like quote unquote white patriots, which is where Timothy McVeigh came from with the Oklahoma City bombing. Those people are trying to accelerate collapse in order to carry out a political project. You now have an entire group of people who are going out, they're assassinating people, they're committing mass shootings, school shootings, you name it. Pete, they're encouraging each other. Basically, you have a death cult of people who are basically radicalizing people over and over and over again, and they're marinating in this nihilistic stew. And unless you know what's going on, and our media has failed at this, our politicians don't want to understand it, they don't want to deal with it, because if they did, the only solutions are this, Pete, which is holding the tech oligarchs accountable, regulating the internet, figuring out how to make these things work, and changing law enforcement to move away from, black and brown people and immigrants and look at the actual problem, which is and has always been white people. White supremacist violence is constant. So they don't want to deal with that. So instead, we're left entirely vulnerable constantly.
It's really important for people to try to understand, even though it's incoherent. It's not so simple as some of these prior assassinations have been. And some, going all the way back in history, that's always, it can often be complex. We can think about some of the most famous political assassinations in our country and others. But what you mentioned about this online atmosphere of, they're just young, they're trying to outdo each other, trying to get attention for each other, they're nihilists, they don't, it's a weird thing. I can't understand. I want to know more about it, for a lot of reasons, but don't they think that if they kill somebody, they're going to spend the rest of their life in jail? It's weird when they're not suicidal, because I have to wonder what they hope the next moment. Do they not think about tomorrow? I guess I was raised in a world pretty simple, where if you committed a crime, you had to consider, maybe there's going to be consequences, and you might spend your life in jail in this case. These guys plot these, they go and commit them, but you talk about this online world where they're so nihilistic. I really I can't understand it at all. I don't understand it.
Well, I want to take a couple of threads here. It has so many elements from America's past. So if it's an accelerationist type situation, you go back in the 20th century, we had one anarchist after another who was assassinating American presidents or setting off bombs. Then you move forward to Mark David Chapman, who tried to kill Ronald Reagan. And you know why he tried to kill Reagan, right?
He was trying to impress Jodie Foster, right?
He was trying to fucking impress Jodie Foster.
Do you know if he did? Did they ever end up together?
He saw her in a movie and fell so in love with her that he wanted to kill the president to impress her. And here's the thing about it. It's really hard because, and this is where in this current environment, everything that's happening right now is both logical and illogical. We are in a maddening situation in this country where so many people are doing things. Fascism itself is inherently self-destructive. There is no further plan. Pete, if there was actually a plan, they would be dealing with climate change. They wouldn't have created an economy that was going to melt down at some point. They weren't going to create a culture of guns and violence. There's no planning for the future. And this is one of the reasons why conspiracy theories run rampant, because when you are in an insane society, you try and figure out why the hell these things happen. And even watching something like Donald Trump, what do we keep doing? Oh, it must be a distraction from this. Oh, it must be a distraction from this. No, it's insanity plus a fascistic machine. And when those things happen, we're trying so desperately to figure out and put the pieces together, but we are living in an inherently insane society. And so as a result, we look at it, we try and make sense out of it. And most of the time, it doesn't make that much sense.
Yes, we're trying, and you're helping us, and we'll continue to try to make sense of it while we're continuing to try to build community and to protect each other and to continue to fight however we can, wherever we can, although it's just it's hard and it's scarier now than yesterday. I mean, what is the what is the level that we're at right now? DEFCON 4, like trying to understand what the next shoe to drop is, where the next assassination is. I almost, worry about some of the most influential, popular, progressive speakers and influencers, who are out there. I won't name any names. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but who's the next person to be targeted? Are we going to start talking in public differently, when we give speeches and talks? Where do you think we are at now post Charlie Cook's assassination?
Well, I mean,
if I
was going to put it on a DEFCON level, I think with everything going on, I mean, it's crazy, Pete. We're talking about this major moment that I think is probably going to be in the history books in terms of like pardon the pun, a turning point. Like we literally are at a DEFCON 2. We're not even talking about the fact that ICE just murdered somebody. Like just murdered somebody in cold blood. And these things are going to become much more prevalent. It's going to become much more normalized and all around the place. And I guess here's what I would say, because it is a tough thing to talk about, and we're talking about community. You'll notice that if you take all this in, it is insane making. It's crazy making. What's important here is I'm sitting here talking to a friend of mine. We're talking about this, and both of us are saying, holy shit, this is so fucked up. Right? And in having that conversation, we're actually sort of processing these things. We're actually coming to terms with it. And I want anybody who has ever been in an abusive environment, whether it's a family or a relationship or a workplace, it helps to talk about these things. Otherwise, it takes up in our head and it becomes normalized, and it starts to change the way we look at the world until we have that conversation and until we start speaking frankly about it and saying, hey, I don't want this.
It's a great comment in the chat by my friend Kim. Our nervous systems weren't meant for this. It's important to recognize how if you're online and you're paying attention, and even if you're not, man, it's just seemingly it's hitting you everywhere.
Well, and by the way, this is one of the larger parts of my research and my organizing work right now. We are in an abusive environment in which we are surrounded by threats. Our nervous system evolved to be ready for threats. Why, Pete? Because human beings aren't very good when they're being chased by tigers, right? And so your body's just I got to figure this shit out. I got to figure out how to exist in this situation. So now we're surrounded by it. And on top of that, I mean, we've got these things that are completely programmed to keep us activated consistently.
Yeah.
So we have to fight a couple of fights. We have to defeat this thing. We have to organize, but we also have to fight a fight within ourselves, which is finding the moments of groundedness, finding some rationality so that we can make plans and we can do better than this. And instead, we're basically surviving emotional terrorism every single day at this point.
Yeah. So give yourself credit every day you survive emotional terrorism. I'm thinking a lot about people with young kids, and I went through it already. My kids are now a senior in high school and a junior in college, and I went through worrying about them going to school every day and the gun violence in school, which is still highly unlikely to happen in your school, but it seems like statistics don't calm you down in this case. So I'm thinking a lot about parents with kids in school. They're the ones that are most on alert and constantly worried about their young kids and the ultimate nightmare. But let me ask you about another thing that is happening right now, and that is cancel culture on steroids. And we could talk about how the administration has been, regulating speech since they took over, part of Project 2025. But I got to just see if I can play this. I'm new to trying to make things work here. But I think I can do this. If not, I'll yell at my producer who doesn't exist. But this is Senator Katie Britt. She was on Fox News with the great American patriot, Maria Bartiromo.
Friend of the pod, Maria Bartiromo. Here is what she had to say. It's about a minute, 17 seconds maybe.
Disgusting. The rhetoric that led us to this moment, calling President Trump a fascist, calling him Hitler, you had news organizations and mainstream media celebrating that, allowing those things to take place and be said on their networks. Right. That is dangerous. Disgusting.
I'm sorry, that wasn't even the clip. It was in addition to that one. See, I'm not that good at it. But basically, they're making lists and they're calling for firings of people who are critical of in any way Charlie Kirk, right? Like you've seen this, you've heard this. It's not only her. I mean, this is a whole bunch of other people who are saying this.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really interesting that and people need to understand this. One of the things in studying right-wing ideology, everything that they say is actually projection. So it's funny, Pete, that for years I was like, paying attention to Alex Jones. He's like, the left's going to create a police state and they're going to put microchips in our brains. The billionaires are coming for us. Yeah. And then what happens? They create a police state. And by the way, like he supports a billionaire who's putting chips in people's brains.
Yeah. Well, right? The right did. The left didn't end up doing it.
Right. Yeah. And there was this guy named Bill Cooper, Pete, who one of the original mass culture conspiracy theory guys. And he said in Behold the White Horse, Behold the Pale Horse, Pete, he said, I know these conspiracies exist because if I was in power, I would do them in order to keep power. So what happened during the whole quote unquote cancel culture period, as they were saying, oh, you're going after people's speech. Oh, you're making them lose their jobs. Like all of that was more or less projection because they were ready to do it themselves. And, this whole idea of free speech, like it has always been a veneer. They don't give a shit about free speech. They don't give a shit about limited government or fiscal responsibility. They don't give a shit about any of these things. Saving children. My God, they are supporting a guy who there's more pictures of Trump with Epstein than Ghislaine Maxwell. And if you actually take a look at this, it has always been projection. And what did they want? They wanted control of the culture the way that they said the Jews controlled culture, the way they said the left controlled culture, the way they said globalists controlled culture. They wanted it for themselves. And it just so happens that right now they're happier than pigs in shit, being the ones who are able to do the things that they were calling people out for years.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing it. They're doing a very effective job at it. I mean, people are being fired just for quoting Charlie Kirk saying what he said. It is real ugly. And, you saw that what's his name? Matthew Dad, who I have no love for at all, gets fired by MSNBC. But then Brian Kilmeade the next day is like, we should euthanize homeless people. And then he comes back with an apology. He's like, sorry, I said we should kill homeless people. Hopefully that suffices. But
Matthew Dowd and Brian Kilmeade have something more in common, saying stupid shit on cable news. They're both so stupid. I'm surprised they don't swallow their tongues on a daily basis. But Dowd, the funny thing there is after he said the whole maybe it was a supporter firing a guy.
What did he say?
He started off the segment by saying we can't be sure that it was a intentional killing. Maybe it was one of his supporters firing a gun.
Yeah, that's why nobody should be on the air spouting shit.
No. And by the way, you and I have been on cable news more than enough times. Like the baseline for saying smart things on there is so.
Yeah, I mean, but I've been on. I was on live a lot on the radio live, and I didn't bring on experts to speculate just so I could stay on the topic and get ratings. I mean, that's what they're doing.
No, that's what they've always done. And it is so abysmal. And by the way, I'm so happy that cable news is dying. We will be such a better society if it just, goes away into the ash bin of history. And I take a look at what happened there with them firing him. And it goes along with shit like what Ezra Klein's been saying over the past few days. Or we just saw in the New York Times, there was a plea for Donald Trump to lower the political rhetoric and temperature. And you look at that, I believe that was Friedman. And you look at that and you're like, oh, that's right. The people who are successful in these circles are the people who are, one, they have absolutely no shame. They have no awareness whatsoever. And they don't say anything that's even remotely interesting because those vectors don't exist to say interesting things. They exist to just sort of feel like so much warm water that's just moving. And people who want to say MSNBC is left, that's an insane thing to say. It's never been that. And the New York Times isn't a leftist rag. They have been, they've just created this culture of just kind of saying the quote unquote right thing, even while it's enabling fascism. It's just very telling. And I'm glad that we're starting to see what's underneath the hood.
Yeah, that's for sure. Oh man. Where do we go from here? I mean, it's like, are you buying any conspiracy theories? But I think the dumbest thing I've heard is that, quote, they did this or Trump did this to distract from the Epstein files. Because I'm like, it's not distracting. We're not going to stop talking. No one's going to stop talking about the Epstein files. And
I love that level of petty evil where it's like they won't stop talking about this story. Which one of my allies am I going to send out to get shot in the neck?
Yeah,
like that is
dumb.
such an incredible theory. And I will say on a serious note, the idea that this is a distraction from this or this is a distraction, we live in such a tumultuous, turbulent time. Authoritarianism goes after everything consistently. They are not distractions. Everything is happening all at once. And we have to adapt and we have to learn how to sort of navigate these things without feeling like, oh, you can't pay attention to this, you can't pay attention to this. You have to pay attention to everything and you have to be able to synthesize it for actual analysis and actual reaction.
And most of us can't do that, so it's helpful to have people that can help us do it. And you're doing it every day on Substack and at the Muckrake podcast, of course, on social media. And I know you're not going anywhere, that's for sure. And neither is this threat, neither is this divisiveness. You know, the other thing I think is just worth mentioning is that a lot of people are experiencing something similar to both the first Trump election and the second Trump election when they're finding out people they know, love, and care about actually like Charlie Kirk. And I mean, it happened in my high school text chat with 20 guys that I went to high school with. One guy just dropped in this tribute to Charlie Kirk. And I mean, I came for him very harshly and so did several others, but that's probably the best space to speak out because that's the best space where you're going to have the most impact with the people that you know, care about, who know you, who've known you for a long time. But you are seeing that a lot again, not only with people, family and friends on social media and text groups, but also, you know, at work, in the workplace, at school and so on. What do you say? Do you think that's something are you seeing that as well? Hearing that, wow, I had no idea my friend was a Charlie Kirk fan. This dude was terrible. How could you possibly revere him in any way, much less, you know, see him as a devoutly religious man? Because he was just using that religious bullshit as a cloak.
Yeah, if somebody you know is sharing like AI slop of Jesus picking up Charlie Kirk and crying over him and consoling him, basically what that is, it brings us back to the beginning of our conversation, Pete, which is if you see someone flirting with this stuff, if you see someone moving towards Donald Trump, and I want people to think about this. In my research, what I have found, if people are susceptible to this stuff, they're having a problem. And I don't mean a problem of political perception. I mean, they themselves are having a problem. It's not healthy behavior. Donald Trump is so transparent. Fascism is so transparent. And basically it comes down to this. If somebody like that is starting to flirt with it, it's a sign to talk to them. It's like if you see someone drinking too much or someone getting like addicted to gambling or drugs, what they're actually doing is they're not dealing with something inside of themselves, whether it's a loneliness, a depression, like something that's falling apart in them. Yeah. And instead they're projecting it out onto the world and they are being taken advantage of by a group that is basically entirely motivated and fueled by taking advantage of loneliness and self-crisis and a lack of self-perception. So if you do see that, what you're actually getting a glimpse into is that the person you care about or the person you know, they're not well. And so you can talk to them. You don't have to confront them always about the political stuff. You can start by talking about them and what's going on in their lives. And yeah, sometimes they need to be told, hey, this shit doesn't fly. But basically what you're seeing is a personal crisis that is being projected onto a political crisis and then back and forth.
Yes. And then what about, well, I just thought of one more thing I wanted to definitely ask you about. Doesn't this fuel the grievance culture of the white right, especially? This killing, this idea that Christians are discriminated against. You know, one of the things this idiot wrote in the text chat to my friends, he's like, I'm sick of being quiet as a Christian man, blah, 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 nonsense. And, you know, there is this idea for years now that white folks, a majority, unfortunately, have that we are discriminated against more than people of color, for example, that the gays are forcing it down our throat, that as a Christian, my rights are under attack, my beliefs are under attack, even though Christians have all of the power in every institution practically in this country, certainly now the government, and in an extreme way, extreme Christians, whatever you want to call them, Christian nationalists, but doesn't this fuel that that ideology of victimhood that they already had?
Well, I mean, Pete, how can you blame them? There was a gay Teletubby, Cracker Barrel changed their logo, and then Charlie Kirk was shot. I mean, how can you go on?
You went all the way
back
to
that grievance, and again, take it down to the personal level, joking aside. I want you to think, and everybody listening or watching to think about somebody in your life who everything is about them. Like everything is a conspiracy against them. Everything is a slight to them. You know, there's this narcissistic martyrdom that takes over. And that idea, it's a projection of self-loathing. It's that they don't like themselves, and the only way that they can feel comfortable is if everything's against them. That culture of aggrievement is actually self-hatred. There's a reason why they get pissed about a transgender person drinking Bud Light. There's a reason why they can't watch an NFL game and not be like, remember years ago when they took a knee? Like, they have to be angry, and they have to feel bad about the world, or else what? They're going to start thinking about their own feelings. It's a drug. In the exact same way that like a drug you get addicted to is a drug. They have to keep up a perpetual martyrdom and aggrievement in order to feel that. And by the way, even if Charlie Kirk wasn't murdered, they would still feel it. Not everybody feels the way that they do. The world has to work the way they want it to, or else they have to sit with their own deep loneliness and their own personal pain, and they can't do it.
What do you say to people who are saying that it's the rhetoric that causes this kind of violence? Specifically, maybe you need to stop calling Trump a Nazi and comparing him to Hitler, and stop calling us fascists and so on, which, by the way, is weird because J.D. Vance called Trump a Nazi and everything. But still, what do you say? I'm just wondering, I know that's stupid, but what is your response to the argument when a lot of folks are saying, stop using this rhetoric, calling us fascist and whatever else? Because, they've been doing that for time immemorial. I mean, Rush Limbaugh, everybody, calling everybody on the left, including Barack Obama, was called everything by mainstream right-wing commentators, and mainstream, like Republican senators called him socialist and all these things that he never was. I think we're calling them what they actually are. What do you say to that?
Fuck you. That's what I say. Fuck you. Like literally, like, what do we see? It was Tucker Carlson back when he was on Fox. It was saying, oh, you keep calling us authoritarians, we'll show you authoritarianism, right? Oh, you want to see a dictator, we'll show you a dictator. This is what it is. It's bullies think that they are the biggest victims in the world, which is why they bully. And I will say something, and I don't know that we have enough time to get into it, and it might be uncomfortable. I don't think we're combative enough. I think, quite frankly, like disappearing people, killing people, terrorizing people, treating trans and gay people like, they're third and fourth class citizens, taking away people's rights and privileges. I actually think when it comes to rhetoric, we should turn the dial up more and call these people what they are. They're fucking murderers. And they're fucking fascist. And this had nothing to do with rhetoric. It had to do with radicalization. It had to do with mental health. It had to do with nihilistic, incentive motives, all of that shit. It had to do with all of that. What is on the other side of this is that we can't play games with this. We are in a really dangerous situation that's going to get a lot more dangerous. And we can't do a thing which, you brought up the nervous system because someone said something about it. Activated states, here's how they work. You can go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And, we cannot sit here and say, well, it's like in an abusive environment. Well, if we're just good to him and if we're just quiet, that he won't be abusive. Or, oh, maybe we'll just leave for a while and he'll work out his temper. You can't do that. We have to fight this thing. And so rhetorically, I actually think that it's not even elevated enough.
Rhetorically. Love talking to you. You'll be live tonight on your YouTube channel. Is that right?
It'll be on Substack tonight.
Oh, okay. So go over to Dispatches from a Collapsing
8 p.m.
State.
Eastern. Be there, be square.
Be there at 8 p.m. You get more with Jared, and I'm so glad we got so much with you here on a Sunday. It's great to see you, to catch up with you, and to stay connected to you and your work.
My friend, always good to see you.
Yeah, there he goes. Jared Yates Sexton. Go support him on Substack. Get his books. Follow him on Blue Sky. Listen to the Muckrake podcast. Join the Muckrake podcast community if you want for more amazing people. And remember, as this pin that my friend Penny gave me at Farm Jam says, by Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thanks, Penny. Thanks to everybody who listened, and I hope to see you at tonight's Hangout at 8 p.m. Thank you to Jon Carroll, who writes and performs all of our music. The great Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter has a new album out, johncarroll.org. Go support him, and anything else anyone in this amazing community is doing. And take care of yourself. I'll talk to you tonight or tomorrow or anytime on our Discord platform.
Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Where the money all went, it'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up, people got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on.